Here's a big breaking news coming in right here on India Today. DCGI nod for vaccine for children. DCGI nod for Covaxin for emergency use. DCGI nod to Covaxin for children aged above 12 years. A big move in a step towards vaccinating kids in India. Now you have the DCGI, the drug regulator in India, giving a nod to Covaxin for vaccine for children, those aged above the age of 12. Covaxin finally gets the emergency approvals. Remember, there has been a lot of hesitation for parents to allow their children out to school. It's been close to 2 years, while adults largely have been vaccinated. In India, kids are yet to be vaccinated on a large scale. In fact, this could be one of the first for vaccine for kids in India. We're looking at the drug regulatory panel, who's now given a nod to vaccine for children. The Covaxin by Bharat Biotech gets the approval, a nod for vaccinating children above the age of 12. Huge development in the vaccination front. India trying to achieve 100% vaccine rate across the country among adults, of course, and now even kids getting a big boost with the Covaxin finally getting an emergency approval nod from the DCGI. Let me cut across to Sneha Murdani, joining us with more information on that. But before that, here's the big news that India Today is currently tracking. DCGI finally gives a nod to Covaxin to vaccinate children, kids above the age of 12. Let me cut across to Milind Sharma, who's bringing us more information on this. Milind, do take us through exactly the approvals that's been given to Covaxin for vaccinating children above the age of 12. This is a big breakthrough. Take us through how soon can we expect it?
Navila, essentially, it's the same vaccine that's been given to adults as well. And Bharat Biotech's Covaxin was conducting trials on children as little as 2 years. But the current approval for the EUA has come for the vaccine that has been tried on children from 12 years and above. So 12 years to 18 years is the current age group where the Drug Controller General of India has approved the vaccine for. Furthermore, we remember that Covaxin's application was pending approval for over a month now because it was held back by the Drug Controller General. But today that approval has come forward, and it's a big news to have vaccines for children in a country where we're looking at Omicron cases and surges as well. And certainly this is going to be good because we only had Zydus' vaccine. Now we also have Bharat Biotech's Covaxin. And let me remind you, it will be the same vaccine that was given to adults as well. So the same vaccine has been tried on children, and the Drug Controller General's approval on Christmas Day comes as a big Christmas miracle for the country.
While many other countries, Milind, have already got vaccines for kids, it appears that this is certainly a move forward to beat this virus, to move forward from the pandemic. Thankfully, now finally the Covaxin has gotten approval. What are the other drug companies that are currently vying for approvals from the DCGI, apart from Covaxin, of course, which has now got a nod? Anything else in the pipeline?
Well, we also have a children's vaccine by the Serum Institute and Novavax called Covax, and we're also looking at other bundle of vaccines that are working to provide vaccines for children in the country. But remember that Zydus Cadilla's DNA vaccine was the first one to get an approval. The vaccine has not been rolled out yet, unfortunately. But my sense is that Covaxin would be earlier, would be easier, and would be rolled out earlier because their components of the vaccine are already there. It's the same vaccine that was being used for adults is going to be used for children. Now, with the EUA, Bharat Biotech will be able to roll out all the doses that they have in surplus as well. And that seems to be a good news at this moment. We know that there have been a surge of Omicron cases in the country, and other countries, as you mentioned, have already begun vaccinating children above the age of 12. Some have even started vaccinating above the age of 5. But this is the first step of the country in trusting that children would require vaccines, considering the situation that is ensuing abroad. We are looking at children who are being vaccinated, children who are being infected. And even though the Working Committee's group of NTAGI has said that children don't require vaccine, but certainly we have to have some kind of weapon on guard so that children are protected against COVID-19 as well as the new variant of Omicron.
Right. Milind, if you can give me some insight into how soon will this be allowed for Covaxin to carry forward vaccinating kids above the age of 12? Is there any timeline that's been set yet?
Well, Nabila, it should happen in the first quarter of next year now, because Covaxin was already manufacturing enough doses so that they could be supplied to their immunization program in India of COVID-19. So we should expect them to roll out in the first quarter of next year, which is 2022.
Right, Milind, this is big news, undoubtedly on Christmas Day, a nod coming in from the DCGI. Of course, there was a lot of deliberation. If at all, it's the same vaccine that's used for adults that can also be now used on children. Why has it taken this long, would you know, for approvals to be granted for use?
Well, Nabila, my sense is that when we spoke to the experts, they were very reluctant, first of all, because they wanted more data and wanted to analyze data on how safe the vaccine will be for children. The understanding from the experts in the government as well as pediatricians was that children were able to handle the coronavirus pandemic better than adults. Children did not show any adverse reactions to the coronavirus infection. Some of them did get SC, but that was also few cases. We were told that about two
Stay with us, Milind. I'm going to quickly cut across to Dr. Naresh Trehan. Dr. Naresh, here's a big breakthrough. Vaccine for kids, finally the DCGI approving Covaxin. The same vaccine that's given to adults now will be administered to children as well, hopefully early next year.
Yeah, so this is the best Christmas present we could expect, because we have been actually concerned about the children being unprotected. And the fact that this data that was presented or approved by the scientific committee some weeks ago was with DCGI, who's taken its time to really study the data and put it through the rigors of scientific evaluation. And now that it has been approved for emergency use, which is the normal way of doing it, like it happened for the adults also, it's a big relief. It's a big relief for several reasons. One, the children will get protection because it is proven that once you are vaccinated completely, that even if variants like Omicron break through the immunity, it still is mild infection. So that around the world, that's what we are seeing, that people are getting infected with Omicron in spite of the fact that they were vaccinated. But the severity of the infection is much less, or actually mild. So I think the children will now will get double benefit, because they have been suffering for 2 years now, not going to school. Human interaction has been very limited. They've been glued to their screens all day. So I think that this will be a big relief once it's rolled out. So the good thing is that it should be done as soon as possible, because of the fact that the approval is there. Now the manufacturing process and distribution has to start. So it's good news overall.
Absolutely, Dr. Trehan, this is good news. Many other countries have already come forward with vaccines for children. India slightly delayed on that front. If at all Covaxin, the same vaccine that's been given to adults, now can be administered on children, why do you think there's been a long delay? Could we have done it earlier?
You know, the scientific evaluation has to be done properly. So once you know that something is safe in adults, then you can adjust the doses and try and do the trial on children. And that's exactly what was done. So if we saw adverse events in adults, then we would not want to use it on children. So the fact is that when crores of adults have gotten the vaccine, and the fact that there has not been any major adverse events reported, then it becomes possible to start the trial on children. So the next step was the 12 to 18 children. Now that's approved, so the next step would be from 2 to 12. So this is now, like Pfizer has been approved in the US for 2 to 12. These scientific steps have to be taken. It has to go through the process, because safety is paramount. You do not want to find later on that there was a mistake made. So I think it's the right move. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it exposes people. So, I mean, it could have, it could have come earlier. Of course, it would be welcome. But at least it's happened now, And it's important that that the DCGI took its time to really evaluate the data and validate it. So the comfort level also goes up for everybody, all the the medical profession and the children. So I think it's something to be cheerful about, and I'm sure the children are feeling relieved that there is something on the anvil for them.
Dr. Trehan, undoubtedly, this is a big relief. It's been 2 years since students have gone to school, barely stepped out. Parents have been very apprehensive. But that on one hand, while there is huge relief, students may get their vaccine on a large scale, there will be some of the anti-vaxxers still very apprehensive to administer a vaccine to children who are generally said to have better immunity than adults. What would be your advice?
The basic thing is that you are specking, if you are an anti-vaxxer, you're speculating whether you're better off without vaccine or is there a real danger. Now, even those people who were hesitant, when over 135 crore doses have been administered with no real serious adverse events reported, at least that should convince people, and the data is very clear. People who were vaccinated had huge protection. People who were unvaccinated and got any of those, whether Delta or now Omicron, they have suffered. Their severity has been very high. So when the data shows very clearly around the world that the vaccinated population has done extremely well, and in the sense of, like I said, even if you got infected, it was mild. Whereas it's not the same. The data coming out of South Africa is just proving it. So I think the best thing to do is, one, for anti-vaxxers who have not got the vaccine even as adults, they should go and get their dosages done right away. Because there are several responsibilities a human being has. One is to yourself. Two is to your family. Three is to your community and country. If you do not, because everyone who gets infected is going to get or infect many more, and the higher the viral load, the more sick they are, the more burden they become on their family, the more burden they become on the medical system. So there is no justification in not getting your vaccine when so much data is available. If there was any doubts, yes, I can understand the fears of people. But now it's been a long time. It's over a year. It's going to be a year, and the fact is that this has shown that the protection is there. So there's no doubt in my mind.
On the same lines, Dr. Trehan, looking at data for over 2 years in India itself, there have hardly been any deaths among children below the age of 12 owing to COVID-19. Many doctors itself have said it may not be the right time, or we shouldn't hasten up the process to vaccinate children. Your take on that?
So, one thing is very clear about this COVID-19. It is an unpredictable virus. If you look at it, last time this year, we had felt that, okay, the first wave went up to 100,000 a day. We managed it quite well, although it was a surprise. Nobody knew what COVID was, and everybody geared up, the government, the private sector, the civil society, all pitched in. There was misery, but still we actually came through quite well. Then suddenly, when we were getting comfortable, then this Delta variant comes, which created havoc in the country. 400,000 a day. The whole medical system was creaking. People died. There was severity of the infection was huge. So this is not a virus to be played with. There is not a virus to say, oh, I'm comfortable and nothing will happen. We don't know it. Did we know that Omicron will come with 50 variations on it and then work havoc around? We didn't. We didn't know that it would be so high in transmissibility. So now we're saying don't spec on it. If it is safe, we have to trust the scientific community and the DCGI that they have put it through the paces. Now, yes, it is true that children were not the targets, but there were still 13 to 14% children who did get it in the second wave. And that what happened was that they mostly had mild cases because their immune system was obviously strong. But the ones who got long multi-system inflammatory disease, they suffered hugely. So it's not like it's such a benign thing that you get it and nothing bad will happen. And you don't know what the new variants are going to do. And this may not be the last variant. Variants happen as people get infected and the multiplication of virus happens in the body. Variants are thrown up. It's like, so that's the whole thing.
Right.
And I think
Dr. Trehan,
there's no
we're surely delighted.
Not safe.
It's indeed, like you said, a Christmas present for India. Vaccine for kids, finally above the age of 12. Covaxin has been approved by the DCGI. Thank you very much, Dr. Trehan. Let me quickly cut across to Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw from, in fact, to give us a perspective on exactly what this means for India at a time of the Omicron threat. Ms. Shaw, here is Covaxin that's been finally approved by DCGI, and this comes amid the Omicron threat in India. Your take on that?
I think it's very welcome news because I think parents and schools will really take this news in a very, very, encouraged way, because I think this is a huge relief for them. I think parents were very anxious about children going to school. I think schools were also feeling extremely responsible, and they had this burden of looking after the kids who were unvaccinated. So I think this is extremely welcome news. And as Naresh Trehan says, this is almost like Santa Claus giving a gift to us.
Ms. Mazumdar, here's vaccine for kids amid the Omicron threat, where we're seeing the infection fast spreading across India. We still believe that kids have a more robust immune system. There are several doctors who are still propagating for kids to be left out from the vaccine drive. Your take on that and your suggestion? Do you insist on parents getting their children vaccinated?
Well, I think, let's face it. I mean, while children do have very robust immune systems, there is a lot of uncertainty about COVID-19. This is no ordinary virus. I mean, it has basically had a very, very nasty impact on people at large, on adults. And there's no certainty about what it can do to children. So I don't think we can take it lightly and just assume that children are going to have, robust immune systems that can fight any virus. So I think it's extremely important to actually protect children. And I think when I talk to parents, when I talk to, school teachers and others who are involved with schools, I think they feel extremely anxious, extremely worried. And I think they all want to know how they can safely send their children to school. And I think this is one way of protecting kids and get that kind of, protection given to children, and giving removing the anxiety from of parents and the school administration.
Well, Covaxin has now been approved for children above the age of 12. The focus now falls on children in the category below 12 years. How long do you think India will take to really come up with a vaccine to vaccinate that segment of the population, while the world over, countries have already moved forward on that front?
Yeah, I think there are several trials that are ongoing. I know that many of the companies are trialing their vaccines on young kids, and I am sure it won't be too long before we can actually reduce the age and at least give it to children who go to kindergarten as well. So I think, starting with 12-year-olds is extremely a prudent step. And I think now getting to 5-year-olds won't be too long.
Right, Ms. Mazumdar, it also now comes to production and actually rolling out the number of vaccines in time. Hopefully early next year is when this vaccine will be rolled out. Covaxin, the same vaccine that's used for adults, can now be used for children above the age of 12. Do you think our vaccine suppliers are able to roll out those numbers?
Well, I do know that Covaxin has been ramping up its production capacity over the last few, several months. And I think they are in a much better place than they were 6 months ago. And I do know that they are in a good position to basically cater to the needs of the this particular segment of the population. So I, for one, feel very confident that the rollout will be smooth.
Mazumdar, a quick word on government support to companies that are rolling out vaccines. For example, Covaxin slacked initially. There was barely any access to Covaxin as a vaccine, even though it was much in demand. The supply wasn't adequate. Do you think the government must support in a manner that you feel fit? Would you be able to explain?
I think the government has done a tremendous job. I think they have supported vaccine companies. They have actually supported even Bharat Biotech in ramping up their production. I think the regulators have done a tremendous job of making sure that they give all the support needed to give all the regulatory approvals for manufacturing, for tech transfers to different facilities, etc., etc. So I think the government has done its bit. Now it's up to Bharat Biotech to roll out the vaccine, which I know it is in the process of doing. And I think at the end of the day, I think it's really about making sure that we deploy these vaccines ASAP.
Right, Ms. Shaw, the irony here, this is the same Covaxin which the WHO hesitated for a while to give its approvals. And here in India, Covaxin now favored even among children.
Let's look at the whole situation in a very different way. I don't think the WHO was, was not favoring Covaxin. You must understand that regulatory processes do require certain things to be met. I think that's what WHO wanted. They wanted a robust package, which finally I think Covaxin did provide. And that's why I think they got approved. So I think that's a very good comfort for us to know that we now have a very robust global package. And now that also gives us the confidence that when you roll out, the children's vaccines, that is a good vaccine with a very robust package. So that's what I think, that's the way I would look at it. I don't think any regulator wants to deny approval if it merits that approval. And I think Covaxin had provided all the required, information with which WHO could finally approve.
Right, Ms. Kiran Mazumdar, thank you very much for joining us with your opinion on that. Of course, this is a big Christmas gift on the day of celebration. Another news to rejoice over. Kids now can be vaccinated with Covaxin. The same vaccine that's given to adults can soon be administered to children as well, but only above the age of 12. Yet there needs to be a lot of research done on vaccine for children below the age of 12, between the age of 5 and 12. Rajesh Parekh, Jaslok Hospital, doctor joining us for more on this. Dr. Rajesh, it's, of course, great news for parents who've been really apprehensive to send their children out or to school. They've been missing school for over 2 years, many of them. Online education, that's just how far you can do. Children waiting to get back to school, hoping for a vaccine to really end this trauma for them. What, in your opinion, does this news mean to the country today?
Well, Nabila, all I can say is I wish it had been a Diwali gift rather than a Christmas gift. But then as the cliche goes, better late than never. What I do not fully understand is why only Covaxin. A lot of other vaccines have shown their efficacy in the same demographic group, 12 to 18. So I'm somewhat astonished that only one vaccine has got emergency use. That's one. But it's a step in the right direction. I am now keeping my fingers crossed and hoping for an announcement I've been waiting for 5 weeks, and that is the administration of boosters to immunocompromised people and healthcare workers, the same boosters which are otherwise going in the dustbin every day.
Well, stay with us. Of course, this is big news coming in, which India Today is currently tracking, where we know that the DCGI has given a nod for vaccine for kids. In fact, sources tell us that the centre will now need to give orders to Bharat Biotech for children's vaccine rollout, depending on the policy for children's vaccination, as well as which hasn't really been firmed up yet. So there's a lot of ambiguity around vaccine for children. And unless the centre now gives a proper approval with a plan here, the vaccine can't be rolled out for kids. This is a 2-dose vaccine as opposed to the Zydus, which is a 3-dose vaccine. So a lot of planning that needs to be done, Dr. Rajesh. Do you think this will happen in time? Because like you did mention, it's just Covaxin that's been given approval is yet. Possibly in the days to come, many more vaccine producers will be given a nod. But many other countries, including the United States, have already, leaped on this front with vaccine for kids rolled out close to a year ago.
True, Nabila, which is exactly why I said I wish it had been a Diwali gift. But quite clearly, it's a decision which should not be made lightly. I'm sure the powers that be has given it due consideration. As to your asking whether I'm optimistic, I've been optimistic for past 2 years, by and large, that optimism has served me well. At times, it has not worked, but there is very little else that we can hold on to than optimism and hope in these troubled times.
Right. Dr. Jaslow, Dr. Rajesh, here we also see many doctors, on the contrary, not really pushing for vaccine for children, saying that children have great immune system. Why vaccinate them when they're able to survive it beautifully well? Because you rarely have cases of children succumbing to COVID-19 below the age of 12.
Well, Nabila, all I can say is George Santania said this over 8 decades ago. And, he said that, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, that those who do not learn the lessons of history are condemned to repeat it. There are lessons from several hundred years ago, but most recently 100 years ago, where the Spanish flu pandemic, in each of its waves, targeted a different demographic segment, one. Second, we must humbly acknowledge we're always 2 steps behind the virus. That's the way it's been over the past 2 years. So one can never predict when a mutant will target. It's already happening. If you see, the Omicron is now hitting people in their 30s and 40s as opposed to the Delta, which hits people in their 60s. So I don't think we should be lulled into a false sense of security with, self-reassuring and self-perpetuating phrases like, oh, children have great immunity, they don't need it. That's the kind of language which got us into deep trouble in the second wave. So I think the lessons of several hundred years of the Spanish flu and of what happened during the second wave should, tell us that it's better to err on the side of being extra careful than being careless.
Parik, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your perspective. Great news for India today, while we continue tracking this development where vaccine for kids have been approved above the age of 12. Covaxin of Bharat Biotech, the same vaccine that you give to adults, will now be approved for children, maybe hopefully early next year. That's when all the processes will be put in place. A plan will be rolled out. The centre has to give a complete rollout plan before this actually come into fruition. Dr. Ravi Malik, CMD, Radix Hospital, also joining us for that. Dr. Ravi, please give us your opinion on vaccine for kids. We were waiting for it and now it's finally here. Covaxin has been given a nod by DCGI for vaccine for children above the age of 12.
It is a wonderful news. It is a good news. And as a pediatrician, I can tell you, I was just listening to the discussion which you were having with the other doctor. But as a pediatrician, I can tell you, children, they need vaccination because of 2-3 reasons. Number one, agreed that the disease is milder in children and mortality rate is less. But according to UNICEF, they have calculated the mortality rate in children and it is almost 0.4%, which is still significant. Secondly, children can spread infection to their parents and grandparents. So it is very important for us to protect children also. And very important thing is there is a syndrome called multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which occurs in COVID in children only. It doesn't occur in adults. It occurs in children only, and it is life-threatening event. So it is extremely important for us to understand that if we want to increase our herd immunity to the tune of 70%, we cannot achieve that without vaccinating our children, because children below the age of 18 years are 41% in our country. So with all these, under the backdrop of all these facts, it is a great news and it has come at the right time. Once Omicron volcano is across the road is waiting for us. So it is very good news. And I think children should be vaccinated. There is no doubt about it.
All right, Dr. Ravi Malik, great point there. Even if children have great immune system, they could very well be spreaders. They could spread the infection to their parents, etc. So a vaccine for kids necessary. Those parents who have been wanting to send their children to school and waiting for a vaccine to come, this is your day. Another reason to rejoice today on Merry Christmas. Thank you very much, Doctor, and thank you for watching.